Hi everyone, and welcome to the Introduction to C# in Unity 3D series. So in this tutorial, we're going to be talking about for loops. So you can execute a statement or a block of code, which is basically a bunch of statements grouped together multiple times using a for loop. For example, suppose we want to count down from 5 to 0, right? Now, the syntax for a for loop is like here, as you see. So we have the for keyword, and inside parentheses, we have the three statements, which are the initialization, conditional, and iterator statements. Now, the initialization conditional statements, notice, are separated by semicolons, but the iterator statement, which is the last one inside the parentheses, is not. And inside the curly braces, we are going to put in our code block, which is which is going to contain, it's basically the bunch of code statements that we want should execute when the for loop executes. So let's have a look at these three statements. Now, the initialization statement initializes a variable that is local to the for loop, which means it can't be accessed outside of the for loop. And it's going to contain the counter variable, which is going to keep track of how many times the for loop has executed. After that, we have the conditional statement, which is a boolean expression that's going to evaluate to either the boolean true or boolean false. So if this expression evaluates to true, then the for loop will execute. And if this expression evaluates to false, then we exit out of the for loop. And lastly, we have the iterator statement, which is going to increment or decrement this starting counter variable, which we declared out here, okay, which we initialized. So this is the sequence for the for loop. So initialization statement is executed first, then the conditional statement is going to be evaluated. And if this is true, then the code block is executed. And once the code block is executed, this counter variable is going to be incremented or decremented in the iterator statement here. So it's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, let's have a look at some code now. And I have my scene set up, and I have my cube controller script attached to an object in my game. And this is what my cube controller script looks like so far. So I'm using my namespaces, and I have my cube controller class, which extends from the monoBehavior class. And because we're using the monoBehavior class, we can use the start event method, which executes on the first frame of the game. And I've called my script cube controller because I've just been using this script name since the beginning of my tutorials. And okay, so let's first structure a for loop. So before you even start anything, you want to make sure that your syntax is correct, okay? Now inside the for loop, I'm going to declare a variable which is of the int data type, and let's call it int counter, okay, is equal to 0. So I'm going to be starting my for loop at counter is equal to 0. And in my second statement, which is the boolean expression, I'm going to check if counter is less than or equal to 5, okay, the number 5. And then in my third statement, which is my iterator statement, I'm going to increment counter for each time that the for loop executes. And then now inside the body of my for loop, which is inside these curly braces, I'm going to use a debug.log to log the value of the counter variable at each iteration. So I'm going to say, oops, the value of counter is, okay, plus counter, okay. So this is not going to be inside the double quotes because we want a number, we're printing out a number. Okay, let's see what's happening here. So counter at the beginning is 0. Okay, counter at the start of the for loop has a value of 0. Then the boolean expression is going to be evaluated. So we're going to check, is counter less than or equal to 5? Yes, it is, because remember, it's 0 right now. So this is going to be logged. The value of counter is plus counter, which will be 0. Okay, and once we're done, then the value of counter will be incremented by 1, and now the value of counter will be 1. Okay, now during the second iteration of the for loop, int counter is not 0 anymore because remember we incremented it, it's 1. So then the boolean expression is evaluated and it's going to check, is the value of counter less than or equal to 5? Yes, it is, because now the value of counter is 1. Okay, then this statement is going to execute. The value of counter is plus, and then 1 will be logged. Okay, and then we come up to the iterative statement, and counter will be incremented by 1. So 1 plus 1 is 2. So now the value of the counter variable is 2. And this is going to continue on for as long as, so let's just check this. Okay, so here I'm going to come to my console, clear and play. Now out here you can see that you see all these log statements, right? The value of counter is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, great. So let's see what happens once the value of counter is 5. So once this value is 5, counter is less than or equal to 5 is true. Okay, so 5 will be logged. Then counter plus plus is equal to 6. So in the increment statement, now the value of counter is 6. Then in the next for loop, right, counter is equal to 6. Counter is less than or equal to 5 is going to be false. So this will not execute. So the debug.log statement will not execute. And that's pretty much it for this tutorial. Go ahead and hit like and subscribe if you found this useful.